Following the Second World War, many war crimes trials were heard. The most famous occurred in Nuremberg, in which the final remains of Hitler's inner circle and his Nazi government were brought in front of a judge. They were charged with war crimes and crimes against humanity and various other charges that resulted in the death sentences of 11 high-profile Nazis, including Hermann Goring, Joachim von Ribbentrop and Ernst Kaltenbrunner. Inside the gymnasium of Nuremberg prison, on the 16th of October 1946, the death sentences were carried out. The method used was the standard drop method, with the US Army overseeing the executions, and performing the executions was a man who has gone down in history as a botching executioner, whose past was much darker than is known. John C. Woods was an executioner with a shady past, who lied to get the job of performing the high-profile Nuremberg executions. Join us today as we look at the sadistic executioner of Nuremberg, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. John Clarence Woods was born on the 5th of June 1911 in Wichita, Kansas, and was raised by his grandmother after his parents divorced when he was very young. He attended high school but dropped out after 2 years, and his life seemed a bit of a mess. On the 3rd of December 1929, at the age of 18, Woods joined the US Navy. However, he could not cope with life inside of the service, as within a few months he went AWOL, going absent without leave. He was served with a general court-martial, and was then examined by a psychiatric board, which gives us a good insight into the personality of who John C. Woods really was. It was found that Woods suffered from psychopathic inferiority without psychosis. The evaluation stated, "This patient, though not intellectually inferior, gives a history of repeatedly running counter to authority, both before and since enlistment. Stigmata of degeneration are present, and the patient frequently bites his fingernails. He has a benign tumour on the soft palate for which he refuses operation. His commanding officer and division officers state that he shows inaptitude and does not respond to instruction. He is obviously poor service material. This man has had less than 5 months' service. His disability is considered to be an inherent defect, for which the service is in no way responsible. He is not considered a menace to himself or others." So the psychiatric evaluation found Woods to have been defiant and unable of following orders, and he was discharged from the Navy. He returned to Kansas and took a number of jobs, being employed in the construction industry as a labourer, and he also worked part-time at a shop. However, he returned to the military during the Second World War. He enlisted in the Army in August 1943 and was assigned to Company B of the 37th Engineer Combat Battalion, 5th Engineer Special Brigade. The amount of experience he had on the battlefield has been disputed, and it's believed that he did see some action in some capacity on D-Day, participating in the Normandy landings, landing specifically at Omaha. But then little is known about what action he saw after D-Day. It was said that he did not get wounded on Omaha, but saw a bunch of guys get killed. I'm sure that he thought, "I do not want to go through that again," and he volunteered to get out of the combat engineers. Now, before D-Day, executions of American military individuals were performed in England only, and were performed by Thomas Pierpont and his nephew Albert. But in late 1944, the US Army were looking for someone within the Army to perform the executions of American soldiers and personnel. John C. Woods was one of a few who applied for the position. What makes Woods incredibly controversial is the fact that he lied through his teeth to get the job to simply kill people. He told falsities to be the person who would be able to legally kill others, obtaining his position as an executioner through nothing but lies and deceit. When he was asked about his experience, he told Army officers that he had been an assistant hangman twice in Texas and also in Oklahoma. Now, what is interesting is that there is no evidence that suggests the US Army sought to confirm this, checking his history out, and that they simply gave him the job without checking. A simple check through the records of executions in the States would have shown that Woods, who was previously known for being rather unstable, was simply lying. Both the states of Texas and Oklahoma during that time, in which Woods claimed to have been a hangman, used electrocution as a method of execution. In fact, Oklahoma didn't carry out any hangings during the period quoted, and the last one took place 3 months before he was even born. If Woods was telling the truth, then he would also have been a hangman in Texas at the age of 12, which is when they carried out their last hanging. Woods had not one piece of experience as a hangman before the war, however somehow he got the job and was transferred to the Paris Disciplinary Training Centre and became a master sergeant. We can interpret this in a few ways. Maybe John C. Woods wanted to try anything to avoid combat as he had done in the past before going AWOL. Or maybe Woods, more sinisterly, enjoyed the thought of, in a sense, being a legal serial killer, executing men at the behest of the army. He performed at least 24 hangings of American soldiers in France in 1944 and 1945, and also assisted in other executions. However, it was noted that at least 11 of these executions in which Woods was present were botched and performed poorly. After the war had finished, he transitioned into becoming a hangman for the US Army inside of Germany, and he was tasked with executing a number of Nazi war criminals. His first in Germany occurred on the 29th of June 1945, where he hanged 3 Germans for murdering a US serviceman, and in November of the same year, he hanged 5 Germans involved in the Rösselheim massacre, which resulted in the brutal deaths of a number of US airmen. More executions continued, with him hanging 14 men convicted of crimes against humanity and mass slaughter at Dachau concentration camp. However, his biggest and most famous job was to be the man who would execute those high-ranking Nazis found guilty at the Nuremberg Trials. The Nuremberg Trials saw the remaining members of Hitler's Nazi hierarchy placed on trial accused of crimes of the Second World War, the Holocaust, and many atrocities that were committed at the hands of the Germans. 24 prominent members of the Nazi Party were tried, and then the proceedings resulted in the death sentences of 11 men. Woods would only perform 10, as Hermann Goring would take his own life the night before the execution. In the early hours of October the 16th, 1946, Woods carried out the death sentences of the 10 men of the Nuremberg Trials that were condemned, and he used the standard drop method instead of using the long drop method. But the executions performed by Woods would be in keeping with his botching past, and many did not go to plan at all. Eyewitness accounts showed how a number of the men died very slow deaths, and that their necks were not snapped at all. For example, Wilhelm Keitel's death allegedly took 28 minutes after he plunged through the trap door, with him slowly strangling to death after falling through. Later, Time magazine published an article telling of the executions, and it was said that there was not enough room for the men to drop, meaning their necks would not be broken, and most men died from slow strangulation. It was also claimed that Woods did not tie many of the nooses correctly, and a number of men whacked their heads on the platform and the door as they fell through. What was interesting also was what occurred with the execution of Julius Streicher. A staunch Nazi journalist who published Der Stürmer, an anti-Semitic newspaper, he was one of those executed. However, it was said, when the rope snapped taut, with the body swinging wildly, groans could be heard from within the concealed interior of the scaffold. Finally, the hangman Woods, who had descended from the gallows platform, lifted the black canvas curtain and went inside. Something happened that put a stop to the groans and brought the rope to a standstill. After it was over, I was not in the mood to ask what he did, but I assumed that he grabbed the swinging body and pulled down on it. It's interesting to consider that Woods finished off Streicher, strangling him to death. The executions were all performed within 2 hours, and Woods stated, 10 men in 103 minutes, that's fast work, and he commended himself for this. After the executions, he did draw criticism, but responded with, I hanged those 10 Nazis and I'm proud of it. I wasn't nervous. A fellow can't afford to have nerves in this business, and I want to put a good word for those GIs who helped me. They did swell. I'm trying to get them a promotion. The way I look at the hanging job is that someone has to do it. I got into it by accident years ago in the States. So even after the job was complete, Woods was still lying to the press about his credentials. After he remained in the military and ended up working in the Pacific, specifically at a place known for testing of nuclear weapons. The island was used by German scientists where he was based as part of Operation Paperclip, a secret program to develop different advancements to support the US military during the Cold War. But it was here where John C. Woods was killed. Allegedly whilst changing a light bulb, he was electrocuted, as he was also stood in a puddle of water whilst doing it. So John C. Woods is a rather divisive figure in history. It's in no doubt that those who were executed at Nuremberg were despicable war criminals who were responsible for the deaths of millions. However, their executions were performed incorrectly, in some cases by Woods. He was a man who ultimately lied to get the job, to kill people legally, which turns up a number of questions about the sort of man and character he truly was. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.